The national championship was on Monday night this week, which featured Alabama and Ohio State, which is better than Alabama and Clemson for what would feel like the millionth time in a row, except for last year, thank God for LSU. But the problem is we might be seeing more of Alabama and Ohio State in the future, as Ohio State has the best class for the next 2 years, and Alabama always gets recruits. So even when we get a change in college football, it usually just becomes the new normal, and that's what happened when Clemson had really arrived, and obviously they've been here for a long time and they've stayed. And college football is a true love of mine, but I've really lost my passion for it over the years, and this is a large part because of the college football playoff. It is a tragic story because all I ever really wanted when I was a kid was a college football playoff to help those teams that barely missed have a shot to actually get to the title game and not get screwed over by the BCS. But since 2014, the college football playoff has completely ruined college football, and today I wanted to talk about that. But before I begin, I would really appreciate if you took the time to hit that subscribe button for me, hit the notification bell, and leave a like on this video. I would really appreciate it. Let me know what you guys think about the college football playoff down below. My Twitter is also down below, so you can follow me there. Now, fixing the college football playoff does seem a little bit too late. We're gonna have to spend the 2020s setting up college football to get back to parity and having close games and not scheduling years in advance and kind of creating a governing body like having a commissioner. But really, college football has been ruined because of a few things. The dominance of Clemson, Alabama, and Ohio State. They've taken all of the talent for their own, and it has really ruined competitive balance, and it's kind of ruined other programs. It's honestly a miracle schools like Texas, Nebraska, and Tennessee haven't figured their shit out, because in recent years, if they have done that, college football would be doomed. It would only be dominated by a couple of schools. And I know college football history, people are going to be saying it's been dominated by a handful of teams. And you know, you guys are right, but it's just now it actually feels like there's no hope for anybody else. Back in the day, at least it felt like there was a change of pace every year. Another thing is some programs just can't compete. They don't have a fair shot. The non-Power Fives who I'm talking about, that's where I get so frustrated. That's where this year's really exposed that. And also, I have not watched a selection show once since 2017, and I really want a March Madness style selection show. I watch that like a hawk, and it's so disappointing that I don't even care about the college football playoff selection show because I already know it's going to happen. But my issue again really lies in this. It's that the high majority of the best players in college football or high school football go to a select few schools because they have the right coaching staff, and the team with the best players will stay on top. They'll be able to keep cycling in new recruiting classes to come in and take over, who will learn from those top players that are already there, especially bearing any injuries. And I mean, I don't know if you guys have really realized it, Alabama and Clemson, Ohio State have produced so much NFL talent in the past couple of years. It's actually getting a little bit ridiculous just how much of the star players are coming from these select schools. Now again, if I was a recruit, I would probably want to go to the school with the best chance to get me to the NFL. But I do think that expanding the college football playoff will help, because then players will probably want to go to different types of schools because they know they still have a chance to get into the playoff. And I got to give a massive shout out to KTO, who recently made a video about the college football playoff sucking, and I made a video about why college football sucks a year ago almost. So it was awesome to see him kind of talk about this and really kind of get more exposure to this issue within college football. He made a ton of great points. Feels like we grew up the same way, rooting for like the small underdog schools, because obviously he was a huge proponent for the college football playoff, but obviously things have just not turned out what we expected when the college football playoff was announced. And just like in Avengers Endgame, when you mess with time, it tends to mess back. And when you mess with the college football playoff, yes, we think that's going to have a positive impact on the future, getting rid of the BCS. It obviously has not done that. It's really done the complete opposite, and it's super disappointing to look back on. College football playoff in theory was supposed to help the small guy, and it was really why I was so hyped up about it. I loved TCU growing up personally. I say this all the time, and I apologize for doing it, but I was hyped to see more schools in the future get their shot with the college football playoff. The selection show, when they would announce the teams for the playoff, was something that was pretty magical that first season. We had a lot of good candidates like Baylor, TCU, and Ohio State, all for that last spot, but I started to become nervous the closer we got, because the media just kept saying more and more how they were expecting Ohio State to get that last spot. And then I lost my hope, even though TCU was 3 in the rankings the last week and had won their game, but the second Ohio State got in, I realized that the college football playoff was a big mistake. The committee was going to give the benefit of the doubt to the bigger team, and then Ohio State winning the title really kind of only cemented that more. Truly, the death of the college football playoff began the second it started. A big guy like Ohio State getting the favor over a little Big 12 school like TCU and Baylor, it only cemented how the college football playoff was actually, in theory, not going to be good. Because the thing about it, it was supposed to help a school like Stanford, Baylor, Baylor, TCU, or Cincinnati break through and have a shot. But what it's done is it's been a guarantee for teams to make it based on preseason rankings, 5-star talent all committing to one program, and especially a bias by the committee to just favor the higher school. And when it's close, they just go with who has more 5 stars instead of who has less losses. We've seen that with like a UCF before. And I've been a college football fan since 2008, and my perspective's a little bit different than the older audience or even the newer audience, but I really think I grew up right in the perfect time of national relevance, competitive balance, and intriguing week-to-week matchups and so on. I really look forward to college football Saturday. Maybe there's just so much going on in the world. Maybe that's diminished college football a little bit, but I spent my time watching some schools that just never got the national recognition they deserve to make like a college football playoff or a national championship game, like a Stanford, a Kansas State, a TCU, a Boise State, a Virginia Tech, a Nevada, an Arkansas, Michigan State. I can go on. And some of these schools were just super close to making it. But college football is just different now. Players are opting out of bowl games. They don't have the same meaning that they used to, like the Fiesta Bowl, the Orange Bowl, the Sugar Bowl. It doesn't have the same feel, and them being in the college football playoff as a bowl game just kind of takes away the glory from it. And this year's really proved a lot of flaws within the system. Coastal Carolina, who beat BYU and went undefeated, had to play Liberty in their bowl game, a team that was on their schedule but was dropped due to COVID results. That's just super dumb that Coastal Carolina had to play Liberty. They couldn't have put them in a New Year's Six bowl. That's dumb. BYU played in a bowl game that I forgot about, which sucks because BYU had a great season. And then Cincinnati got screwed over the most. The committee never gave them a second of respect. I mean, if it was an 18 playoff, they would have been the last team in. I mean, Iowa State, God, I love them, but they had 3 losses and still finished within the top 10 because they play in the Big 12 and they played a lot of good schools. It just doesn't make sense anymore. College football playoff has been around for 7 seasons, and in that, buckle up, because this is really what points out why the college football playoff has been a disaster. College football playoff has been around for 7 seasons. In that amount of time, 11 programs have made it. Alabama and Clemson have made 6. Ohio State and Oklahoma have made 4. Notre Dame 2, and LSU, Oregon, Georgia, Florida State, Michigan State, and Washington have all made it once. If I were to go back to the 7 years before the college football playoff, 16 programs would have made it based on the final rankings before the bowl games if the playoffs were a thing back then. Now, that is not as many as I was expecting, I'll be honest. And Alabama led the way with 5 appearances, but some of the schools that would have made it were Stanford, TCU, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, and Virginia Tech. And everyone's favorite underdog, Texas, also made it. Sorry for the little shot at Texas. And no team had more than 2 appearances, which is really what I want to hammer home. College football was never about the underdog. The team that is the best should win, and I agree with that. Yes, it is the best thing ever when a team you wouldn't expect comes around and shocks the world and makes a run, but I'm not trying to say the only teams that should win are the small programs. I really don't want to make that the point in this video. I still love seeing the top programs in college football play. Don't get me wrong. College football will always be dominated by the top teams, but we should have the fun added teams thrown in, and really we should have more competitive balance across the board, and this is why the college football playoff has become flawed. And to continue my point, I went back 5 years to point out how much fun the college football playoff would have been for 12 years back in the day. If I asked 5 years from now who would be making the college football playoff, without a doubt you would be saying Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State, Pennsylvania. In, and that only leaves one more spot. But I went back and we had a total of 23 teams make it, and only 7 of them would have made it 3 or more times. So obviously there's still a lot of teams that could make it, and some of those schools that would have made it would be Georgia, Iowa, Miami, California, Penn State, Michigan, USC. So that's really where I want to bring in expansion for the college football playoff. And I could throw out a million ideas, and personally I would want 16. I think bowl games have been diminished already by opt-outs if you don't make the playoff, and the nostalgia factor for these bowl games has really been lost. And I think that we need to add more chances. It helps out with recruiting. Yes, the BCS bowl games were great, but I think that we should have them being played in a 16-team playoff. And the best part is, by winning, you can still get to a national title. And another point I want to make is I also don't want teams to have a bye. I want them to be playing immediately right after conference championships end. This will also help the smaller schools, so obviously the bigger teams that can possibly get a bye don't have that time to prepare. I'm trying to make this as fair as possible, by the way. And I also love teams hosting the first round, and then after that we should have teams play at like the Rose Bowl or fun places that we're used to, like the Orange Bowl or Sugar Bowl, and then the national title game should travel around the USA. But another person that I really value the opinion of is Joel Klatt, and there are 2 types of college football fans: those who side with Kirk Herbstreit and those who side with Joel Klatt, and I'm 100% Team Klatt.
Well, we have 5 Power 5 conferences that behave and act in their own self-interest. The playoff is owned by the conferences. So that means, guess who the most powerful people in the sport are? The 5 Power 5 commissioners.
And by the way, and 2 of them, one of them, the SEC, has the most power.
They have no incentive to change.
That's right.
Because this is not the Power 5. This is just like, we're continuing to prop up the SEC.
It's the Power 1.
It's the Power 1. Do we think Alabama is one of the 4 best? Yeah, probably. So guess what? They don't necessarily have to win their division. They don't have to win every single game.
And they can schedule 3 cupcakes.
And it doesn't matter. And it doesn't matter.
Now,
and his ideas of expanding the playoff are genius in fixing college football. He said to remove conference divisions, top 2 teams make the title game with 9 conference games, 1 Power 5 non-conference game, auto bid to the conference champion and best group of 5 champion, only max 2 losses for independents, and remove the committee and have a BCS model. And he also threw out 3 ideas: a 16-team playoff where the first round is on campus. Just imagine that. That would be insane. The second round would still be on campus as well. And then the bowl cities with floating Super Bowl like College Football National Championship, and playing it really all before the NFL playoffs start. I'm a huge fan of that idea. He also threw out a 14-team playoff, which gives the 1 and the 2 a bye. I mean, I'm still a fan of this. I would love to see that happen as well, but I'm trying to eliminate the bye. And then he also said 8 is not big enough, so he has a 10, which also gives a bye to the 1 and the 2. It still gives it meaning. I'm a huge fan of this as well, but I do think that we need at least 14 or 16. I think that would really help even out college football competitive balance. It would help ensure that recruits all don't want to stack up at one school because they still have a shot at making the playoff. That's what everybody really cares about anyway. And we have to spend the 2020s setting up college football for the future. Once we get to the 2030s, college football is pretty slow. It takes a lot of time for things to set in. But the biggest issue of all is that the college football playoff is under contract until the end of the 2026 season. Will college football return? We can only hope.